Thank you. Hi, everyone. I call today's CDC Executive Committee meeting to order. May we please have a roll call?
Don Bastian.
Here.
Lori Chassey. Michael Childress.
Here.
Michael Crandall.
Here.
Eddie Guston.
Here.
William Henneth. Brian Krajewski. Lynn LaPlante.
Here.
Mark McLaughlin. Alicia Page. Greg Schwarzy.
Here.
Nina Yule.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
No.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. I move to approve the minutes from the CDC Executive Committee regular meeting that was held on Tuesday, January 3rd.
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
We need a motion.
Oh,
Yes.
Motion? Okay.
And then seconded by member Schwarzy. All in favor?
aye. Aye.
Thank you. That passes. I move to approve action item A, recommendation for approval of a first modification to a community development block grant, memorandum of understanding with the DuPage County Department of Community Services, single family rehabilitation program, project number CD 21-14, increasing the award amount by $60,000 for a total of $219,175.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dave, would you like to speak to this and answer any questions?
It is a bigger footprint, so you have more.
I apologize.
Sure. So this is a small program, part of what we do. Income eligible homeowners can get up to $15,000 in repairs. It kind of was abruptly stopped in 2019, and then with COVID, it was a struggle to get any of this project done. Last April, we hired a full-time person to do this and then to do all our inspections, and he's really done a great job of kind of cleaning up old files and catching up with where things were and trying to get things over the finish line. And so his agreement runs through the end of March, and based on what he's projecting, he needs an additional $60,000 to complete all his projects through the end of the March. So we'll use basically unspent admin dollars from previous years to fund that. But I guess I would just highlight his work to kind of catch up and clean up a project that was kind of had an abrupt end and then wasn't really doing much during COVID. And so he's done a nice job of cleaning that up. The only other thing I would mention here is it's a little odd. This is one of the memorandums that county signs with county in some ways. So it's the DuPage County as an entity signing an MOU with the Department of Community Services. Basically, most of our projects get contracted out to a municipal partner or to a nonprofit, and they own the project. This one we do ourselves, but HUD has always wanted us to have a memorandum of understanding in place to sort of set the budget, set the parameters, set all the expectations for the project. So it's a really nice project in the sense that sometimes for individuals, this is something that helps them stay in their home for another year or helps them address a need that otherwise they just have no means of addressing. So it's been nice in that sense. And we have done some work with municipalities to help if they've got like a code violation and someone is unable to pay. Sometimes we can refer them to this program and address their code violation there, and then makes the municipalities happy and it helps the individual. So.
Yes.
Does this program also include any organizations like for veterans and stuff that might need modifications to their property? We had a veteran that became in a wheelchair and he couldn't use his bathroom. And so a group of residents and an organization actually went in, gutted the bathroom, renovated it, made it handicap accessible for that veteran. I don't know if that's something that.
I mean, I would say they're eligible. The Veterans Office here in the cafeteria has some funds available too. So sometimes we look to see what's the best fit in terms of funding, but veterans would be eligible for this program.
As long as they were income eligible.
Right, yeah.
Are there any other questions? No? Okay, I would just like to reiterate and emphasize your appreciation of the staff member who has been doing such great work and getting everyone caught up to speed. So all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes. So let's move to informational. Item A, Community Development Commission Executive Committee Overview, presented by Dave McDermott.
Some of this is a repeat from last month, but we have new members and I just wanted to make sure we have a unique structure. I just wanted to make sure everyone was familiar with that. So first of all, it's 2 meetings back to back. One is Community Development Executive Committee. The other one is the Home Advisory Group. The only reason for the difference is that Naperville participates in the one pot of money, but not in the other pot of money. So we have basically two separate meetings. Sometimes you'll see the same agenda item on both meetings. The other thing I was going to point out is that the committee is composed of half municipal members and half county board members. The chair alternates every April between a county board member and then a municipal member. The full committee meets on April. So all of you, all county board members, all municipal representatives will be invited in April for a full commission meeting. And then the work, the month-to-month work is done by an executive committee. That's you guys here. And then that will change over in April. So the municipal members, county board members are already assigned. Municipal members will reach out in the next month or two. We'll be looking for people if they're interested in continuing, or if they're not, we'll be looking to replace them in terms of slotting the committee members for April through next March. And that lines up just because that's our funding period. That's our funding cycle is April to March. So I just always like, it's a little bit of a unique structure. So I always like to take a minute, especially since we have new board members. So that's all the update that I had on that.
I will add for the county board members, you'll see some things will stay here at CDC or home advisory, and other things will move up through the county approval process. The differentiation there is this body is responsible for all of the policies, all of our local policies for how we choose to invest our CDBG and home funds. But anything that involves a commitment of funding, so a new agreement or an amendment to an agreement, those agreements are actually between the county and the entity receiving the funds. So this is a policy board. It advises, it creates policy and then advises the county board on specific projects, but then the county board itself has to approve the projects. So you'll see some things will be a roll call vote here. It's a roll call vote. It means that implies that it's a policy decision. If it's a voice vote, that means it's going up to human services and then to finance and the full board.
Yes. Does anyone have any questions, especially our new board members, about anything about this committee or how it functions? No? Okay.
Now, the meeting before this one, the 10:30 meeting, the development, should we be at that meeting or no? We don't.
That's a totally different subject matter that the development committee handles, like building and zoning policy for the unincorporated portion of the county. So you'll see people applying for zoning relief or, development, those kinds of things. It's completely unrelated to this. This committee is charged with overseeing the community development block grant funds, the emergency solutions grant funds, and the home investment partnership program. So those are the specific grants that this committee oversees, as well as discussions about sort of community needs on affordable housing, those kinds of issues. But the development committee, it is a little confusing. The development committee is strictly kind of zoning related.
And we're about $6 million annually in new funding, and then we're typically spending more than 1 year. So in a given budget year, we're usually working with more like $9 million, $9 to $10 million.
Okay.
Okay, great. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to informational item number B, which is the 2022 grants funding review.
So we have typically done an annual update of how much money we've spent in the community. Two reasons for this. One is to highlight the efforts of staff and all the work that goes into processing these payments. Second is just to recognize the economic impact of these funds. So this is federal tax dollars that are coming back to DuPage County, being spent in DuPage County. So in calendar 2022, we spent just over $9.5 million in projects. That's not counting staff time or admin time. That's only counting projects. To give you a rough ballpark, about $3 million went to infrastructure, so streets, sewers, water mains. About $4 million went to capital nonprofit projects. That is increased a little bit by the acquisition of the Red Roof Inn with DuPage Pads. That was $3 million from this pot of money. So county gave them $5 million total, but $3 million was under our funding here. So that influenced that a little bit. And then we spend just under $1 million on public services. So it's salaries and benefits for nonprofit staff, basically. And then we spent something like $1.5 million on emergency shelter, homeless services, housing services. That's that number is a little inflated with COVID money. That wouldn't be like, an annual number would not typically be that high, but we had some additional money because of COVID that we were using to provide emergency shelter, and so that number's a little bit higher. So a total of around $9.5 million paid out from us to contractors or nonprofit agencies in calendar 22.
Yes, Member Schrozy.
Can you explain how the money is approved for things like infrastructure?
Sure,
what
it's
hoops do we have to jump through to get the stuff like that approved?
plenty of hoops. It's a competitive application first and foremost. So it's we solicit applications from municipalities. The big thing with HUD is that it has to be in an eligible income tract. So it's an eligible. We look at a specific area, and then the municipalities. Addison is certainly one. Carroll Stream has a big project coming up. We look at their
The community park?
Yep. So that one is still going forward. It's on the list for this year. So that's the big thing. You have to establish that eligibility, and then we apply. They apply. We score it. We determine which ones are the most eligible. I will tell you, in DuPage County, not every municipality has an eligible area, or not every municipality has an eligible area that fits the project. So we tend to do a lot of projects in 5 communities, especially in the northern part of the county. But we are always trying to kind of reach out and do more to get other communities involved, because we want to. The other thing, frankly, is part of the reason we get the allocation that we get from the federal government is based on all of the municipalities participating in our consortium, participating in our whole group. So, you know, we want to kind of take the money and then get it back out to the same area. That's the reason we got the funds. So we try to look for those opportunities.
And sometimes we were trying to create those opportunities because we found that sometimes some of the lack of applications were due to, you know, not having enough information from the municipalities to apply, or they needed a little bit of help walking through the application process. So last term, Dave and I kind of went on a little township tour, municipality tour, just to try to bring people up to speed, answer questions, show them what they're eligible for, and help them navigate that path. So I think that was pretty darn successful. We should probably continue to do that and see where else we can. I would love to keep doing that and see, you know, just to try to drum up some more applications and successful applications, right?
And our GIS department is great in developing a map that we share with each municipality that says, you know, here's the eligible area. The challenge is they don't always have a project that lines up on that area. So that might not be the, you know, but if they're doing the streets, they plan to do the street, you know, the streets in that neighborhood, that's great, it lines up well. But if they're doing the streets over here, it doesn't. So
Right.
Well, our timing can be challenging for municipalities. Our federal regulations, if you're not used to them, can be challenging. You know, there's a couple of other hurdles that, so if you're a one-off, if you've got one area and you're there may be some barriers for you to apply. So that's what we try to address.
And you answered my question, and my thought process was, so you have an eligible area, a neighborhood, say, or apartment complex, and you either need to, the whole street beyond that needs repaired, or water main or something, you cut it off at the boundary, so to speak. Is there a boundary?
Yeah, I mean, there's a calculation that can be done, but but that's generally the idea. The work should be done in the area of the low mod income tract. Some of the areas, like some of the communities that have a couple of income tracts, because there's also typically a cap on how much money we're going to give them for a certain round. So they'll do this section of the street, and then next time they'll apply for this section, and they'll kind of repair an area over time through that.
Thank you.
How are you?
Thanks. I had 2 clarifying questions. So these projects that you were just discussing, it's not limited to unincorporated DuPage, right? It's
Correct.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And 2, the $9.5 million you said were federal dollars, obviously, but are they all from CDBG grants, or are they from ARPA also and other things, or what?
So they're from CDBG CV, which was our COVID funding, Home, which is our affordable housing fund, ESG or ESG CV. So CV would mean specific COVID funding that was allocated through the CARES Act. The only ARPA money that we have is about $6.5 million in what's called Home ARP that was allocated. It was passed as part of that legislation, and then it's comes through HUD and came to us, and that's specifically for affordable housing. We have submitted a plan for that funding. We have not yet had a project for that.
There's a lot of money coming in from all different sources that we obviously deal with. Okay, great.
Correct. Yes, Patty.
So back to the grant program, do you guys do ADA? Like if there is an area of unincorporated that sidewalks or something need to be modified for ADA compatibility, is that funding that can be used out of this program?
Yeah,
Out of
we have done ADA
the
type
HUD program?
stuff. Again, it has to be eligible in all the other ways, but that could be done as part of a project.
Okay, so do you offer it to our unincorporated residents, or is that something do you wait until it gets absorbed and assumed by a village or a city and then let them do it? Or do we have a proactive way of making sure that our unincorporated individuals who need ADA assistance, like walking, sidewalks, that type of thing, that they have that option available to them, or at least know that there's money out there to do that?
So, and Mary, feel free to jump in too, but the challenge with unincorporated areas has kind of been the who will manage the grant challenge. So it would have to be either our own building and zoning department or public works, or someone would have to apply and actually. So in the case of municipality applies, we award the funds to the municipality. We're involved, but it's their
Right.
project.
Right.
The challenge with the unincorporated areas has been, like, I think we have done projects in the
Yeah, we have
unincorporated.
done projects in the unincorporated areas. I think the Public Works Department has managed those, similar to, Public Works in Carroll Stream might manage within the village of Carroll Stream. So the county's own staff is aware of the ability to apply for these funds. It sounds like you're talking about assistance to individual homeowners though, which is more along the single family rehab. So if it was a situation where a person with a disability who was income eligible couldn't get in and out of their home because they didn't have the proper stairs or they needed a ramp or something, that would be eligible under
Yeah, we have one of
the
those
that would
right
be
now.
under the single family rehab program, not under an infrastructure project. If a municipality or the county was doing a streets improvement project that included sidewalks, that would be an infrastructure project. And yeah, the county's public works department could be an applicant, just like any municipality.
Because I know at the city, we had a TAB, Transportation Advisory Board, and that board, the staff would bring forward, hey, we've got a break in sidewalks where there's no sidewalks, so people can't safely walk, right? And so they actually would go through the whole process of where are those lack of sidewalks so that people can walk safely. And so they would present that and say, this is what we're doing. We want this, funded so we can do this. I just didn't know if the county had that type of program that they do where they can identify where there are those breaks in that, because it is a safety issue and an ADA issue, obviously, if you can't walk, walk it. So I just didn't know.
Yeah, I think
where
that
it
would be,
was.
that would fall probably either under Public Works or DOT.
Okay.
That would kind of look at, I believe that there is, I think it's called some sort of like an access plan. That might be a John Loper question for where, down in transportation, questions about sidewalks and access.
But the funding wouldn't come from this type of source because it's ADA or not.
If it was if it was in a low or moderate income census tract, it would be an eligible project. So if the county identified an unincorporated area and they wanted to do street improvements, including sidewalks, and it's in an income eligible area, Public Works Department would apply just like a municipality applies.
Thank you.
Michael.
I just have a question about, okay, we have the money, we have a project, we know there's a need there. How is the contract handed out? And how do we ensure that women and minority businesses are included in it?
Sure. So it's a competitive bid, so it's a sealed bid procurement, typically follows federal procurement standards. HUD has actually, so we have tracked minority and women businesses. We report on those twice a year in terms of who's participating in the bid or who's being awarded contracts. That's actually gone on for several years longer than, so HUD has been requesting that longer than I know county has more recently looked at some of that with their contracts. So it is a report that we do specific outreach for those enterprises, and then it's a report that we submit twice a year. We haven't.
Where's that report out?
We report HUD. We report on who's awarded contracts and who.
But if I'm as a board member, where can I go to see?
Oh, I can certainly send it to you.
When contracts are issued, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, I believe one of the processes is that so we have a contract with Carroll Stream, and I'm only picking on Carroll Stream because Donna's sitting here. We have a contract with Carroll Stream. Carroll Stream is issuing or going out to bid for street improvements. They then have a list of women and minority-owned businesses who we have on a list, and they individually reach out to all those organizations to let them know that the bid is on the street.
Okay, so Carroll Stream would reach out.
Right. Yeah, we don't actually, the community development unit doesn't issue bids. Because we're not managing the actual project, we're managing the grants and making sure that the grant recipient is doing. So we look at so we have to approve the whole bid packet, but we're not actually the ones issuing the bid. The contract would be between the village and the actual contractor.
But I will get you some information on it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on to informational item number C. Status, this is some great news. Status of HUD's required timeliness ratio.
Yeah, so thrilled to report that, so every January 31st, HUD has a test. You're not supposed to have more than 1.5 times your annual allocation in your accounts. So if our annual allocation is roughly $4 million, we shouldn't have more than $6 million in there. 3 months ago, I sat here and said I didn't think we were going to make it. I didn't think it was looking good. I'm happy to report that staff came through. All credit to them. They worked very hard. They did a lot of really wonderful work, and they helped us to achieve this goal. So we came in under that. We came at 1.44, which is, it's kind of like a pass-fail sort of thing. So we came in under, and that's great. So all credit to staff. Special thanks to Julie Hamlin, who's the project manager, Ashley Miller, who is our senior housing and community development planner. She's relatively new in her role, and it kind of, the way the projects worked out, she kind of had the big projects that we needed to get completed before the deadline, and she was able to do that. But all staff, right? Every dollar we spent in the last year helps us achieve that measure. So all the staff working on various projects. So very excited to report that. It's just one of those federal benchmarks that it's a good thing when we meet it. We don't have to do a compliance plan. We don't have to do a follow-up. We don't have to do anything. We just met the measure. And we're really well positioned going forward. So I think we should be in good shape for next year too.
I think it just can't be said enough how amazing the staff is at the DuPage County. And DuPage, when I was out in Washington meeting with our federal lobbyists, they were telling me that DuPage is known as the most well-run county, one of the most well-run counties in the country. And that is directly attributable to our staff. So I will always sing their praises any chance I get. Yes.
They're all watching on Zoom.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But your reputation really is spread far and wide. And DuPage County has a phenomenal reputation in terms of how efficiently and effectively this county is run. So thank you. Thank you, staff. Any other questions or comments about that from anyone? No? Okay. So any other business, any old business?
Just one more.
Yes.
Well, two more things. So one, thank you for today was a little more educational. Sometimes we were light on action items today. Sometimes if we don't have a lot of action items, we do cancel the meeting. But today I wanted to meet since it's the first meeting with the new board. And so thank you for letting this be a little bit more of an educational meeting. And then second of all, there was a question last time by member Deacon Garcia about land banking specific to one of our funds, Home Art Fund. So we did look that up. I just wanted to follow up with the group. So the way that legislation is written, it would have to be under construction within 12 months. So we couldn't necessarily just buy a parcel of land and sit on it waiting for a development to come along. The only way it could possibly work is if it was sort of an identified development and identified developer, and it was just determined that it made more sense for county to acquire it as part of the transfer, but it would have to be within 12 months in construction.
So, man,
Yes.
so when I was here, I brought it up, she and I talked about it. So if there has to be a plan, when do you start potentially having a plan? And then, because of course, if you don't have a plan and if you don't potentially have a plan in the future, you will never have a plan.
Yeah.
So then that's the question number one. And number two is, before we even go to any kind of plan, what property is available that the county does own? Because doing a HUD or IDA affordable housing construction, it can't be accomplished with the cost of land in DuPage, because the cost of land is so high, but then HUD and IDA do a regional calculation of what the numbers should be, which aren't really reflective of every community. So to be positive and move forward with either IDA or HUD affordable housing, or identifying what DuPage's affordable housing calculation should be, are two things, they're two different things. But if we don't have any land to even consider as a donation or anything like that for any type of affordable housing, IDA, HUD, or any kind of customized affordability in different areas, then we're just wasting our time. So I guess that was kind of Garcia, and my question was like, do we have land? And, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some conversations with Paul Haas in Building and Zoning about that, about what land's available. There are sometimes parcels that come up, or we have talked about clean and lean and whether that's a that's a program where sometimes the county can acquire land. Could that land then be turned around to develop affordable housing? Possibly. There's always some zoning considerations or some other considerations. So I don't want to say that there's zero parcels out there that are potential, but you're right. I mean, it's DuPage County. It's challenging to find a place that's not developed. It's challenging. That's one of the struggles all of our affordable housing developers have, is how do you find a space that's not already developed, but large enough to do what you want to do there, it meets the, has enough space for parking and all of those considerations that come in. But I get your point too about there's a little bit of a, not chicken and an egg, but it's sort of like that's why historically there's been the developer, a lot of that's been placed on the developer. Developer needs to find the parcel, developer needs to propose the project, and then we come in and fund or don't fund. If county wants to take a more active role in that, in a sense, like if they want to acquire or they want to be, directing parcels in a certain way, or trying to, where they have influence, it might look a little differently, but you'd sort of would have to potentially, some of that could be accomplished with county funds, and then maybe the HUD funding comes in, so it would look a little different. So when I say it has to be under construction in a year, I guess that's if you're acquiring it with this particular pot of money. If you're acquiring it with different funds, it wouldn't be under the same time.
But I think the county not being home rule plays into that as well. So I don't believe the county can so it's not too different than what we would have to do with HUD funds. I think the county probably has the legal authority to invest so provide some financial assistance to a developer, but I don't think the county, because we're not home rule, could just go out and purchase available properties and sit on them as a land bank. And then, waiting to offer them to developers. That's probably a state's attorney question, but.
Yeah, and that would be more of a property right issue too, so you don't want to even go into that one. But if we had land already, I think that's what Garcia and I were talking about. If it's already there, is that something you look at or not? So. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other old business or anything else? Okay, seeing nothing, then I move to adjourn today's meeting. Thank you. Until our next meeting, which is March 7th, 2023. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. See you next month.